What if the real conflict in your life isn't between you and another person, but between who you're being and what you're avoiding? Every fight, misunderstanding, or shutdown isn't just about miscommunication, it's a mirror. And the real solution starts within. Today, Brian and I are going to be unpacking this radical idea that how you show up, your energy, your presence, and your intention can either escalate conflict or completely dissolve it. And we're going to share some real life examples about where we're doing this well and not well. And this episode is going to completely challenge everything that you know or been taught about communication and conflict resolution, because it's not just about saying the right thing. It's actually about being the right space. So join us as we explore the hidden workings of man, what presence really is, and why the Invincible Man Brotherhood is such a powerful and effective way to transform at a core level. So Brian, you've got a real-time story, something that's happening like right now in your marriage and life. And I've got some things to complement that. Let's jump right into that.
This week, my wife, while we're laying down to go to bed, basically says, "Hey, I got something to tell you." And I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" You know, one of those ducks. She says, basically, your listening sucks. And if you don't know what listening is, you're gonna get it through this. But, um, and of course I'm like, okay, show me what. What are we talking about? So she goes into this context, and we now have two girls, and she's been super conscious about their oral health and their mouth health. She's been listening to these podcasts because it all started with my baby's having a tongue tie, and do we need to get the tongue tie cut and all the invasive species, all invasive procedures. And I'm like, no, just relax. It's all natural. Everybody has a tongue tie. Don't do this stuff, right? And then she goes down the rabbit hole. She learns about all this stuff, and I'm always like filtering through it to find like what's a racket, who's trying to just scam us for money.
Yeah.
Well, finally, she'll say these things enough, and then I'll look into them, and then I'm like, okay, you're fucking right. Like mouth breathing. If you don't know, that's a thing for your kids. It's really bad, and you should check it out. But fundamentally, mouth breathing. My kid's a mouth breather. My baby might be starting to be a mouth breather. So like, there's all this. I look into it, and I'm like, okay, she's right. But I always filter with like a guarded through a shield, and she's tired of it, frankly, I think is really what I got in reception. So in the middle of this contention, though, she's like, I can't even tell you, like what it is. I posted this thing on Facebook, just watch it. And I'm like, you can't tell me? You can't land the communication for me? I have to go look on Facebook. So I get on Facebook. I start watching this video. It's 3 minutes long. It's like a Mel Robbins video, and she's interviewing somebody. And it starts with, if you have an immature parent who just could not connect with you or was not interested with you about anything you were interested in, and they looked at you like you had three heads, and they just kind of like weren't willing to connect with you, that's an immature, what do they say? Emotionally immature parent. And that's like the first 30 seconds. And I like stop the video, and I'm like very offended, because I'm like, what? Are you saying I'm that for our children? Like, or you're saying that's me for you? Like, what the fuck? So I'm super offended, and I'm letting her know. And she's like, you didn't even watch it all. Just watch the rest. And I'm like, just fuming inside, and then I start to like, I have to be this way. I have to, because I know you don't think like I think. I'm looking for those people taking advantage of us. You don't think, and I'm being
Offensive.
condescending.
And condescending.
That's really how it is. Yeah. And I'm just like, don't tell me, I'm immature. So anyhow, she's like, just watch the rest. So I watch the rest. And it goes through, and it talks a lot more about when somebody isn't wanting to connect or doesn't have the emotional space or emotional acuity, emotional awareness to be able to let you have your experience, to get where you're coming from, to like be able to resonate with that, and then to be able to respond in kind, to offer something, to contribute something so that the child or the other person on the other end can benefit from it, right? What's the alternative to that is fundamentally you are in your own world, caught in your scape of what's important. You're scanning the world. Somebody's talking to you, and you're just reacting to whatever that is. You're responding in your, I like to say, caught up in the ego. I don't know, Vince, you know what I'm talking about? Is there another way to say
Yeah,
that?
it's good
You're
enough.
just in the space. You're not aware. You're a being who's walking around on the earth here to have an experience. You're just in the experience.
Yeah. There's a self-preservation mode. I think it's like it's really self, and who cares about anyone else at that point? It's like really isolating, of self to other, right? And the other's like that there's disconnection there and whatever. It's just I need to protect me, defend me, my point of view, whatever it is. And that just creates this distancing in whatever relationship it is. It could be with any person.
And I'll admit, I live most of my life in that mode. That's called the distinction surviving.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, as men we want to look good, we want to be successful,
And
be
I got an
right.
agenda. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make this world as I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're on that mission, right? And the mission matters. And so there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But where it veers off sometimes is the creating the disconnection when conflict isn't resolved. And in this case, as far as I understand, right, you're still in this conflicting point of view between you and your wife, right?
Well, not so much with my wife. So let me just finish the story here. So I watched the rest of the video. I and literally I like lay back onto the bed, hit my pillow, and I'm just like furious. And then just seeing that it's literally talking about the emotional immaturity of somebody who can't hear or listen to something, right? And like I see it so clearly, and I literally I'm at the point of my life where I look up, I thank God. I'm like, there could not be a clearer, experience that I could have had to make me wake up to something. I literally went from like relaxed, I'm like ready to go to bed, to like, oh, we need to talk about something, to the roof inside of like offended and angry, and then like didn't even have the presence to like watch it all, to just be with it, and to I was out of it, and I got like, okay, there's something here for me here. And in the experience of it, I really see a common thread of my entire life. And that is that when I am offended, I become very condescending. And she literally pointed out in the middle of our argument. And then, I think this is where maybe I need a little transition for help, but
Well, that's where, and I'm going to just put in real quick. We're gonna unpack. We're gonna explore some of the underlying mechanisms, the motives, the hidden factors that cause men to be what they're being, do what they're doing, and even have what we're having, because there's this invisible realm of the unconscious. There's thoughts, there's emotions, there's feelings, there's sensations, there's conclusions, there's convictions, there's, interpretations about ourselves, about other people, about the world that run as like background code that drives every bit of our behavior. And so when that's invisible, when we don't have a light on that, like our awareness is, blocked to that domain, we find ourselves repeating patterns, whatever it is. It could be addiction to something, a way of being, it could be addiction to a certain habit, right? There's a lot of things that can, whatever, behavior is controlled by our perception 100% of the time. And perception is hugely unconscious. Perception is, what happens when information comes in from the world outside, or could be even something going on internally a little bit. And then there's an interpretive, conclusion about what it means. Is this good for me? Is it bad for me? Is it going to hurt me? Or is it going to help me? And when we interpret that something's going to hurt me because we've been hurt in the past, we've been wounded already in some similar-ish way, then we go off, we rattle off that survival tactic, to get control again, to fight, to, or flee, or, we isolate, withdraw. So what's cool about this conversation is that we're going to look at real world issues. I'll share a little break down on my own in communication. And then what we'll do is we'll start to unpack like what's really going on in Brian and Vince. Like, what are we really feeling? What are we really thinking? What are our interpretations? What are our motivations? And we're just going to just peel away the curtain and of ourselves to see why do we do what we do. And in this conversation, you'll get a lot for yourself. You'll start to see in your own world, in your own inner world, what might be happening. So listen in. It's going to be very powerful. And go ahead, Brian, if you want to continue.
Yeah, no. Um, just I think I'll just bring a little presence to why we're doing this. This is to showcase what a men's group is really about and what value you can get from just listening, which is what you're going to be doing for us. But when you're in our space with us, there's a different quality. And then when you share, there's a different quality brought to your being, your presence. And that's what we're doing this for. And I think it's worth saying, like, really, we're going for an awareness bump.
Totally. Blind spots exist. And the blind spots are the sabotaging factors of our lives, period. We don't know what we don't know. But these types of conversations, this type of relating man to man, whether it's just Brian and I here or, multiple men in a group space, the sharing without the judgment, the worry of having to look good, get it all right, like anything and everything is allowable. There's something so profound when you can stop hiding and know it's okay. Because that's the one thing that's stopping us from growth. It's stopping us from achieving success in all dimensions of our life. I cannot let anyone see this thing. I can't even myself see this thing, because if I were to see this, it would take me down. These are the deep, dark parts of our shadow that, I've spent 26 years exploring within myself after wondering, why did I become a drug dealing criminal who almost got himself killed in 1999 through a drug overdose? It's like, obviously something is running that I don't understand. So that stirred this fire in me to figure out what's going on. And in the last 26 years, that's been my primary focus. I mean, I've run businesses, I've done things, but whenever I wasn't doing that, the next thing I was doing was like, what am I? How do I function? How did I become this way? Why are my relationships still falling apart? Like, what's getting in the way for me?
And what did you find about what you can do for yourself versus what's the alternative?
The alternative, like of not taking inventory of like
of doing it for yourself. Like
Yeah.
you can only be aware of what you're aware of.
Oh, so yeah, growing alone. I spent 10 years trying to unpack my divorce. The problems, the trauma from that, pretty much on my own. And really, the breakthrough came when I started engaging with other people. I formed groups to train coaches and leaders. And when I started to be a participant of my own group coaching, that was when I started getting the bigger breakthroughs. It was having those mirrors that we talked about at the intro. It's like other people together in a particular way with you. There's frameworks on how we operate, right? Structures, kind of rules that guide the how to be. But what happens is a tremendous amount of awareness starts to open up inside of the realm of the unconscious for all members in the group. And so in 2013, I created a group called the Core Encounter for that purpose. That's where I really began to get deeper breakthroughs that I just could not get in my own meditations. I was already a deep meditator. If you see there's a picture of the Buddha here on the wall, that's been my journey from the beginning. And it's beautiful. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think that's a very good foundation, but it's the mirroring of other human beings. In our case, especially with men, conversations can be a little bit different sometimes when it's just men to men. And I've done men's groups, led men's groups, for multiple years. And it's really, it's a way that we can accelerate our transformation of self-sabotaging behaviors and attitudes, right? Like, and that's the key. Like, the inner creates the outer. And the problem is we're so focused on the outer, almost everyone, men and women really, but we're trained to like solve problems in the world and we're not really trained on how to solve problems in the inner world, which is why there's such an outrageous number of people with mental health issues, kids that are on medication at like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. It's like ridiculous to me, right? Because not that we don't know how to handle what's going on, but there's just forces that are profiting severely on other people's sicknesses, and lack of well-being. And so I want to counter that by giving people what I've learned and developed and, innovated on how we can access that inner territory safely to radically shift the wiring under the board, so the way of being changes. But we have to have honest conversations. That's what, Brian, you're presenting with us here is just, hey, here's an area where you saw, well, the way I get, something's driving me to like I get defensive and da da da, and there's like I want to protect my kids, and then there's the perception that my wife doesn't think about these things, so it's like she's wrong and I don't trust her maybe, and there's other dynamics there. But when you can't talk that through and see that, well, it just continues to just be like this conflict that doesn't resolve, and that's what we're here to unpack a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you just shared that, I can see that a lot of the offend being offended that spurs up, right? Like I perceive that I'm being listened to
Mm.
in a certain way. I perceive that my wife, thinks something about me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I can see that consistently, like in our experience.
Mm.
And I've just noticed that that thing that I know she thinks this thing about me, we do that with all people in all relationships with others. That's mostly a reflection of me and the way I think about others or how I would think about me if I only had this information about me.
Yeah, I think, and I want to add that it's definitely there's a mutual perceiving going on. Like there is a perception with the other also, as well as self, and they may not be aware of their own perceptive functions and factors, right? How their perception's working in the moment and what content is actually underlying their perception, which is driving their performance, right? Their behavior. It's always driven by, Brian, I see you this way, so I'm going to act this way. So at the bottom of it all, we're all trying to survive, which means avoid pain, because pain could lead to death, and death is the ultimate thing we're trying to avoid. And we're trying to gain pleasure and life supportive, resources or qualities, experiences, right? So those two poles we're dancing in all the time. So it's mechanistic, sounds kind of dry. It is. but it's the reality of why we do what we do. And there's just no arguing it. You could take any human being, even the pedophile is in his own twisted way trying to survive something, right? For him, we can judge it all we want, and I certainly do. but I also understand that there's some computer programming there that somehow got twisted, and he may have been abused or isolated or withdrawn, or who knows what led him to that. But somehow, the criminal, the people, the insane person, whatever it is, everyone's trying to survive. And the thing that's missing for us is we just don't understand what their mechanism is. What is the machinery that got developed in the coding that's running this person's life right now. But you can bet your bottom dollar that if we decode and ask enough questions and they're willing to open up and explore, we'll find out, well, when this happened, I concluded this. When this thing happened in my life, I concluded that. And there's a series of conclusions that just lead us to be a particular way. And that may not be very healthy for us.
Exactly. And I think that just to highlight one thing, because while it is a mutual experience, I'm unconscious, she's unconscious to some together. I think she thinks this, right? Like it can get really complicated. But here's what I know is that when I take responsibility for how I'm being about it all, I can see the power shift. I can see not like between me and her, the power shift, but in my power grows in how I create that outcome. Literally, I can, if I want a loving relationship and that's my intention, that's what I want to create, I can see that this is in conflict with that. It's a breakdown of that. And I can change my way of being. I don't want to be condescending with anybody because it is a breakdown in love, right? Like people get activated. I know I get activated when somebody's being condescending to me, and that's mad, it's just a ratcheting up from there.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's how it escalates into like road rage and people getting shot, driving to work one day. It's like, it's unhandled.
here I am. I want to gain more awareness about it all, but in full awareness that like that's what I'm here to get a grasp on. I want to get awareness about it all because this is my problem. And I can't look to the world because even though I see that all humans deal with this thing, I got to take responsibility for it.
Yeah,
That
and I
much
want
I
to.
know.
It's great, and I love this, and I want to point out part of the why that I can, infer is that I love my wife, I love my girls, you know, I I love the idea of having a family dynamic that's really whole and complete and working, and I can see that this isn't really providing that, and there's an impact that isn't ideal, and it's worth me dying to something, it because if I can die to that and if I can give this thing up, I can have this other thing that I don't yet have, and I won't lose what I could potentially lose. And so it's important that we get clear about the impacts, and each of us has to evaluate whether the why is, the end result is important enough for us in a conflict resolution capacity. And this, I want to just point out, like, this conversation can trigger certain people who have had like relationships that are abusive, with people, partners that are abusive, parents that are abusive, abusive, anybody, have been abused by whoever, the neighbor. I mean, because we're talking about responsibility, and I've made this, I'm going to just be transparent about a huge mistake that I've made, because Brian and I come from a certain similar pattern of training background where 100% responsibility being caused, over our world, and, taking a look at ourselves and shifting our way of being. And what I have experienced with one of my girlfriends specifically, in the effort to move her into responsibility in her relationship with her dad, it I ended up completely bypassing the unresolved pain and inner conflict that she was carrying, and it exacerbated her chaos inside, dismissed and invalidate her. And my motive and my intention was pure as gold, but what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Move other people into full responsibility. You
Right.
can, though, inspire them
That's right.
into responsibility.
And I was attempting to communicate, you know, that, she could handle this in a particular way because I had been effective doing this. But what I neglected to notice was that I also had taken a lot of time to process my pain prior to that. And so that was like invisible to me. And so the impact was really hard. So what I'm saying here, as we have this conversation, the conversation is, as a man, how powerful and influential we really are when we get it, right? And yet there may be men that are listening, or even women that hear this conversation, that are in a state of like pain and hurt, and they've been really hurt by someone that, you love or care about, let's say. And the idea of becoming responsible and shifting your way of being to resolve conflict in that relationship can feel threatening, maybe, right? Scary. I know I've been on that end.
That's a great point. And I'll just preface that with, if you had to break yourself into two categories, being a narcissist or a codependent, being the narcissist, you need to look inside. You need to be the one taking full responsibility for all things. And I am more likely the narcissist for sure. Mm. And as a codependent, somebody who's always shifting themselves around another, somebody who's people pleasing, all those people, you need to take a different approach. You need to be responsible for that. But let's just say different rules apply to you, right?
Yeah, they might be taking space, getting support for what's unresolved.
There's
first.
Finding your power in it.
Finding your power, exactly.
Yep, there's a difference.
Well said.
So a different.
Love the narcissist codependent distinction. No one's ever presented those two in contrast to me before. I love that. That really lands. So thank you.
So let's get back to me, because it's all about me as a narcissist. Well, you got to be sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's ironic. That's an area where I have failed in a lot of ways in my life, because the codependency was there. Growing up with an alcoholic mother, abusive stepfather, very intense and dominating dad. Like I don't even know who I am. Like where who am I? What am I? Do I even matter? It's like, no, I'm taking care of my bloody mother on the floor right now, trying to make sure she's gonna make it through the night, and this is my childhood. So it's like I don't there is no boy self. There's just I have to handle shit. I have to handle shit. There's danger everywhere. So I'm like 47 just getting like, oh, I gotta choose me. It's like, oh yeah, Vince. And it's like there's just like a barrier to that. And it's an invisible, hidden, silent, there's nothing here for you, bro. Like, like there you stay out here. You gotta look out here. You gotta watch out. It's like fudge, man. Like, wow. So anyway.
What I what there is to really grab from what Vince just said is that you are unaware of some dimension and likely many dimensions, and you're only aware to some degree in all context of your life.
Yeah.
So there's context in my life where I'd say I'm unaware, and let's just say that's like around my worth, around what
Mm-hmm.
value I bring. These are some of the core things that I still am working with, and I'm just like grasping. It's like searching around in the dark. I don't have any context around it. It doesn't make sense to me a lot of times, right? I haven't been able to tell a good story about it because, frankly, I haven't triumphed over it. So I don't want to tell those stories and I don't want to share
Mm-hmm.
those things with other men, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here to do it because that's what's going to need. I know it. It's what God calling me to lead me to the next.
And that's being a leader. And I'm gonna highlight that right now. Being a leader is not about being perfect. It's not about having it all figured out. It's not being an expert on all things. When I started leading one of my coaching groups in 2020, I was coming out of a nightmare of a relationship. I lost all my money, went back into debt a bit, had a bad relationship going on, was isolated in a new state without friends and people local. And, you know, I started just coming out with the truth of where I was at. And that was very attractive and appealing to people. And I was bringing coaches on board who had certifications, but they weren't super experienced, some of them, to support my groups. And then what they were noticing was like, wow, Vince, like you're the first coach we've ever worked with or seen who's not presenting this image of like, I got it all together. It's like you're crying in the group, you're sharing your breakdowns and your conversations, your failures and how you're cleaning that up and all this stuff. And so what you're saying here, Brian, is, what I love is that we're leading from that place. It's like we're inviting men to realize, that you don't have to have it all together. We do also want to look good and have that triumph story so we can not be perceived as a failure in our lives. And that's, it's okay. Like we're allowing that to be there also inside of our perceptual background. But we're as you can hear, as Brian's sharing himself and I'm sharing myself, we're saying, hey, this is what's there in our hearts, and we're being with that, and we're not reacting from that right now, and we're not hiding or withholding that. So there's a level of freedom that comes with the transparency, and that starts to neutralize these unconscious patterns. It starts to release us from that core fear of not being seen as good enough. And that will change how you relate to everyone and everything in your life, especially yourself, right away. So let's keep going. We're going to unpack this idea about how you show up. Your energy, your presence, your intention can either escalate a conflict or help to de escalate the conflict. And Brian, you've got your story here that you've already opened up for us. So why don't we polarize the two views? There's a way of being where you're escalating conflict, and then what's underneath that, and then what's the way of being that de-escalates? How does that work in this particular situation?
So, the way of being that escalates it's to stay in my position and I'm feeling offended.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I'm right about being offended and I can defend and keep my heels dug in from that position and talk through and just basically look for opportunities to attack my wife.
Perfect. So I'm going to bring some of the frames in that I use in my core communication training and how we get more linguistically precise to become more aware and distinct about what's going on. So you said, I feel offended. So in Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication training and distinctions, which I bring into my core communication distinctions, he points out there's a difference between feelings and interpretations. And I never knew this until I studied him years ago. And it's the feeling offended is actually an inaccurate statement by his definition. And here's why. He says feelings are what's going on internally. It's personal and it's subjective. There's words that we use to say, I feel like you're judging me, but that's not a feeling. Like we speak this way. It's like, and the reason this is so critically important is that when I say I feel offended, the attention is on the other. It's about their behavior, and then it's their behavior, and then I'm feeling something, but I haven't distinguished yet what I'm actually feeling. And this is the key that unlocks our soul and gives us real freedom. It's like, what is the actual feeling? There's feelings like helplessness, disappointment, fear, disconnection. Like, so if we go a little bit deeper, Brian, when you feel offended, in that sense, what are you really feeling inside? Do you feel
Yeah, so what I'm
subjectively?
actually feeling is that my wife thinks less of me.
That's an interpretation of your wife thinking less than you. So what's the feeling? So the feeling would be, I feel worthless.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
that worthless
I
is more
feel
of a
worthless is at
subjective.
the core, which
That's right.
I can always jump there because that's usually what it feels like.
So why don't we just take a moment to welcome that, like how you really felt in the moment. This is part of the work that we do. When she said what she said, you had a feeling. So by being with the feeling directly, and this is for anyone watching, if there's ever a time where you felt someone is offending you and then you felt feelings about that, there may be feelings of worthlessness there. Just welcome, be with, have whatever that actual sensation is in the body. So Brian, I'm inviting you to just pause and recall the moment where she says what she says or she's presenting what she's presenting. And and of course there's that charge. It kind of happens pretty quickly. And have the charge, that reactive.
It's a feeling I'm avoiding. I don't
Mhm.
get there. So that's why it's really hard for me to ever actually feel this feeling of worthiness. I don't let myself feel that. I
That's good.
spike in anger. It feels tight in my chest.
Good.
Like there's, like, no, we're
Right.
not going down this road. We're going this way.
Mm, perfect.
So it's a constriction. I like tighten
Hmm.
down, right? Like that's
Yes.
what manifests because there's a feeling or an experience I'm not going to go to. And I don't have any clarity about what that is.
Okay, perfect. So that's the case often. And so when that is the case, the first
Well, I
thing.
wouldn't say I feel that often, but
No. I mean, what I mean is often, like for all of us, like when we're first feeling that there's a reactive charge, there's the effort to protect, to preserve, or to protect from feeling the fear and the pain that's driving it, right? All reactive behavior that's, distorted or causes problems in our lives is driven by a wound. And then the fear is this energy of like, I don't want to get down there. And so to avoid the fear and the pain, we have some way of being. And you just described your way of being, and your animation is great because it's like, no, we're not going there. I'm not letting it's like this defensiveness and this attackness. It's like perfect. So then the first step is to just be with that and to have that, to have the defendingness and the feeling of resisting anything that's going on inside of you below that, and not making that wrong, but being intimately interested in how it feels when you're rising up to protect.
so I just have to share some of my inner dialogue that's happening while I
Perfect. That's
go through
very
this
helpful. Very
because it
helpful.
always kind of occurs this way to me sometimes. And
This is good.
sometimes I get it's not. But really, what's happening is my mind is saying, this isn't going to work. We've tried this many times. We've gone down this road, but it ain't going to work.
Mhm.
And then I realized that that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's right.
It will. So I have to like quiet that thing down.
Actually, I think bringing it out onto the table is actually great.
Well, that's one way to stop something,
Yeah,
acknowledging it
acknowledging it exactly. Good.
and being forthright in a space with human beings. You call out those things, that's actually what will it will stop it. It will dissolve. It will disappear. One of those things we talked about around how to dissolve conflict is to acknowledge things, put
Right.
them out here so that we're both talking about them, seeing them for the
That's
same
right.
thing.
So
Right?
Brian, you're speaking that out so that you can start to move through that,
So yeah, so I can
not be
attend
trapped
to
by that.
like, okay, so this feeling of worthlessness, the constriction, I don't want to feel this. I mean, it's if I'm worthless, I'm going to die. And
Mhm.
it's sheer terror, and I'm still not letting myself get there.
Right, in the body. So what do you feel in the body when you're defending and, raging a little bit to protect? Like what are those sensations like
Like
in the
my
physical body?
central column just gets tight and everything's just like fight right now.
Good.
Let's go.
So
This is
welcoming
not where we're
that.
going.
So yeah, welcoming that energy, right? Like right now, like the access to the deeper level is the surface level that is showing. The surface level that you are conscious of is how it feels when you want to fight. This is not going to happen. It's like, it's all this charge. It's like, it's like just welcoming the inner warrior's defenses and his energy, his impulses, how he's feeling in the heart and the throat and the belly and the arms, the legs, like, your back. It's like your face. Like there's an energy, there's a nervous system, pattern that you can welcome. And there's nothing to change or fix about it. That's a key. It's really being interested at a more intimate level. What do you feel?
What's kind of showing up is like this experience of anxiety, which
Okay.
I could see would be like a fear base. It just kind of shows up in my shoulders a little bit, and it almost like starts thoughts and feelings around like it's all coming to an end,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
I have no control here.
Yeah.
I am at the whim and I am going out. My flame is getting extinguished.
Got it.
Like
So
that's
beautifully described.
how it experience it, and it actually makes me. I can feel it. I hate this feeling. It's an anxiety that makes my stomach queasy,
Okay.
and it just makes me sick. So I don't let. I'm not gonna be sick.
Okay. And that's where having a coach is important, or a guide, or a presence of another who says, can we continue to welcome how this feels? Can you lovingly and compassionately, as best as you can, be with the sensations, the feelings, the anxiousness, that fear of dropping down into utter helplessness and worthlessness? Knowing that there's nothing going on within you that's greater than what you actually are, the one that's aware of what's there. The body feels the
I'm just
fear.
always torn between what am I creating? Because at some level, I always get to this point around I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel anything. I'm kind of just experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and I get, and it just like kind of reinforces that like I make the narrative, and then literally like I start making a narrative. I start seeing how bad it can get, so I start
Mm-hmm.
like feeding how bad could this anxiety feeling get, and I try to go that way. Is that something you would recommend? Or am I just
No.
exacerbating something? Am I
Yeah,
creating something that's not even there?
maybe. And all of that's important to observe.
Yeah.
Like in this practice, where all it's about is being aware, and everything that shows up is valuable. Whatever you notice about whatever's happening is more awareness about what's underlying how the mind body functions at a deeper level. So, welcoming whatever you see, whatever you feel, whatever patterns of communication or narrative, whatever sensations are there in the body. It's about being really interested just as awareness. There's nothing wrong with what's there. but there may be parts of the mind body that seem to judge or resist, and that's okay too.
I mean, okay, so here I am. I'm just being with this experience of being worthless.
Good.
Okay.
And can you simply be with it, welcoming it, maybe honor that it needs attention? It just wants to be seen. That there's this part of you that's felt alone or isolated, maybe powerless. Can you be a space where power can flow now to this place, where love or support can land where it felt like there was none? It's something to be curious about. This is where we get a little innovative, maybe. Like, what would love feel like here? What would care and compassion for this part of me be like? You may not understand or know right away. That's okay. It's about being open to a possibility of being intimately caring for that.
What shows up is just having having nothing about this experience and being able to share it is like where the power lies.
That's
And from there, I'll transition to what's next, I suppose.
That's
But,
right.
I think there's just why am I avoiding this experience of being worthless?
Can you sense the avoiding effort?
No, that seems pretty unconscious.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep a space open for that to be seen when it's ready. And anything else that's ready to be seen right now. There may be a longing to be seen. There may be a fear of being seen. There may be a longing or a wanting to suppress.
Yeah, so it's very much tied to rejection
Mm-hmm.
and somebody just casting me away or, just not willing to engage or connect or the
Yeah.
many ways rejection can look.
Yeah, let's welcome
So,
that.
yeah, in rejection, I can see I got a lot of mental chatter around how to overcome rejection, but it
Yes.
still hurts,
That's right.
right?
That's
And
right.
inside of the hurt, there's, I guess, what I can see now is just to be with it
That's
and
right.
honor it and welcome it. And, then I
Yeah.
suppose there's nothing else except to go to the next level of like, okay, well, I've moved through that. Now I know what's next.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so I want to point out this is the Invincible Man right here. It doesn't look like Superman and Iron Man like coming through with defeating the big enemy. It's actually this very gentle surrendering to those parts of me that I've been avoiding my whole life. And what Invincible is really, it's not about conquering. It's not about winning and dominating. It's about an integrating and becoming whole in our experience through acceptance of parts of us that were not accepted probably by others, rejection, right? People are saying you're not good enough for this, this, and this, and turning away from you or whatever. So then we internalize this sense of not enoughness, or I'm bad and I'm wrong because I did this, this, and this. Therefore, now I'm alone and people don't want to be near me. And so the Invincible Man is what makes the Invincible Man an Invincible Man is the capacity to handle his own fear and his own pain safely and openly for the first time in his life, which is great because you're demonstrating so beautifully and it doesn't maybe look like much, but you can feel that this is different than the average way of how you do life and relationships and even with yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can, I mean, what becomes very apparent to me is that at the very least, I am going to have more awareness the next time I'm feeling worthless,
That's right.
and then there's something for me to discover in that. Like, I get like, okay, so I'm going to be with it. Just as I was being with it here, discovering that really I discovered like all there is to do is be with it.
Yeah.
I just go with it and then next, will come, but
Yeah.
don't hurry the next. Like there's no reason to. Just be with it.
That's right. And you'll notice, and I want to point this out for everyone watching too, is that it started with a present time, current event of conflict, challenge, and we welcome the immediacy of that, and we begin to navigate a little deeper into it's all just what are you currently thinking, what are you currently feeling, and where in the body, so on. And then I just continue to ask the questions, and that's where like I won't even go here by myself. I'm highly trained in what I'm doing. I know what to
Yeah,
do. I know
well,
what
it's
to
not
look
that you
for.
won't. You really can't.
No,
You can only go
exactly.
so as far as you can go, and
Yeah,
then there's what's possible with other people holding that space for you.
exactly. Holding that space and leading deeper.
Yeah,
So
somebody willing to probe.
there's an eliciting, like a drawing out from within. But then, like when you get kind of stuck, why? Because what did you notice in there? There were parts of you that were like, "Stop here," right? You said some things about that. And so when I hear that, so my job is to be the invitation, but it's also to be the interruption a little bit and say, well, what else is there? Because our internal makeup is already conditioned to resist access because we have decided quite automatically this is not a safe thing to feel or be with. I don't like this. I don't want this. And so there's all these layers of barriers and defenses that are unconsciously established that we need to start to move through fluidly. And it's a gentle process. It's not as exciting as me watching Mission Impossible, last night. And but it actually is so profoundly powerful. And it will make us more present because one of the things Brian really wanted to speak about here that you wanted to talk about, brother, was presence as a man. So I would love for you to reflect. Can you see how what we're doing here with what we just went through there can help you be more present? And if so, how so?
Yeah. Well, what happens if I can be with the thing, and let's just conceptually say that's the worst feeling I could experience, death,
Mm-hmm.
but I could be with it inside of like my own internal dialogue, inside of the sensations in my body. If I can just be with it and I have no fear of it itself, this fear of death, then I'm able to receive what actually is being communicated. What, even though that may be the way my wife has to get my attention, she has to offend me. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I have to offend you so that you can wake up to something. And actually, just come to think of it, that's how I do it for a lot of people. I have to offend them.
I got that too for myself. I'm like, wow, I trigger
I
people
literally
all the
have to
time.
offend you to wake you up.
Yeah.
And often you won't because you get caught in this same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've kind of got to the point where like I know that doesn't really work.
Right. Well, it can if you use conflict constructively, right? Because for me, I know I'm going to offend a little bit and trigger, but it's like if you have capacity to then handle that dynamic, then that because sometimes people will not many times they won't access anything real like that really needs attention until that offense or the trigger is stirred up, which can make me or whoever's doing it look like the bad guy in the moment. And I'm as a coach who does this work, my clients often will suddenly think that I'm totally against them in some way. And we always resolve that, but it's like if I don't probe a little bit and if I don't expose a little bit, then nothing gets done, right? Because they're avoiding and they're just going to keep avoiding. So the one
So
thing I was
back
going
to
to
the
say is,
presence, it's just my
yeah,
way of being is far more relaxed and at
right.
peace.
That's right.
And therefore, like I can move through and make progress really, rather than being triggered and thrown off. And then I got to have her deal with that because I haven't resolved something and I'm in fight or flight mode, right?
So perfect. So that answers the part where we were going to talk about the distinction between escalating conflict, the way of being connecting with that or associated with that, right, versus dissolving it. And so my approach to conflict resolution, even when I do couples coaching, is give the man or the woman, whoever I'm working with, the space first to access their pain, their fear, their inner conflict, because that opens up a space for them to. I don't try to take them into communication with each other right away because there's too much charge, right? They've already got a lot of stories and feelings and meaning, and those could get triggered so easily. I've seen that in my own dynamics. But when we neutralize the individual's internal landscape's conflict, which is their self-suppressive mechanisms. I don't want to feel this feeling of worthlessness, helplessness, inferiority, insecurity, the nightmare of my traumatic abuse that I had in the background. And, but that's what's driving all conflict in all of the world, whether it's individual level to another person in a marriage, family dynamics. It could be a national conflict like we have right now in politics in America. And then we have global conflicts. If you were to look all the way to the core, why are these conflicts existing? You're going to find that within human being, there's unresolved fear and pain, and then the effort to avoid it. So what are we going to do? Let's shoot missiles over there and, dominate these bastards. Like there's a sense of lack, right? So if there's not cooperative, collaborative harmony and unity, that someone's carrying a sense of I'm not enough. I don't have enough. So I need to take. And I know as a drug dealing criminal, that was my attitude. I'm making money hand over fist over people's demise. It's just pure selfish motivation. Well, that's what we see globally. So this system, this formula of handling things, which I call invincible coaching, is a way of navigating that inner landscape to dissolve conflict at its root level in all areas of life.
So then, because if you really want to get that one-on-one attention and make a lot of strides, you're going to hire a great coach like Vince, for sure. So then how is the group that we're setting up, that we've created, what happens in that dynamic that may be different than getting that coaching? Because we don't really have all the time to lead people through a lot of that. A lot of times, sometimes we're going to have to, because that's what's called for in the moment. But what is the other value? Like, what can you see?
Yeah, well, what happens in the group, the reason I like group coaching, I have a preference of group coaching over one-to-one coaching. And I will always try to move my clients into a group dynamic if possible, because it accelerates actually the transformative process. Because and I learned this when I launched the Core Encounter, I saw that, wow, having 6 people plus me facilitating, each person sharing opens something up for another person. So I was already doing one-to-one coaching prior to that. And then when I got into the group dynamic, it was like, whoa, it was like multi-dimensional, accelerated healing, transformation, exposing of things that people didn't even know they had to deal with. But yeah, it's the multi-voice, the multi-self-expression dynamic that exposes more blind spots. One man's share is going to connect with another man in the group. And so it's, massive. And even if I'm working with one person, I find that other people are following for themselves and they're getting something for themselves. Often, like in my group dynamics, I'll be just working like intimately with you like this. And then everyone else, when we have everyone else share, it's like, oh man, when you were doing that, I was noticing this in myself. So it's like, it's literally multiple people are getting the transformative experience.
For sure. And that's like where when people reflect, the wisdom of the collective rises to the top. It's like this cream that comes, and that's the divine source from like what's there.
There's another important scientific part of this too. In the group dynamic, there are lots of studies that I have looked into that show that in a group dynamic that's properly operating, meaning the way that we are with each other, like, and over a period of time, people start to feel like more safe, more comfortable. The brain and the nervous system are relaxing and regulating in a new way. So there's co-regulation happening in the group space. meaning the fight or flight symptoms and effects are just, they're starting to diminish. There's this unconscious sense that, okay, I'm not alone. I'm with more help. Once members start to feel like, okay, every member in this group is for me, what that does is it makes it even more powerful for that individual to go deeper, because they're more willing to let the guard down. I'm really good at doing it on a one-to-one level, but I got years and years and years and years of experience. So, but and I can only work with one person at a time. So it's not ideal in terms of transformation, but the group space, man, the supportive dynamic, and then partnering people up, having special conversations, there's just this, again, amplifying factor, but there's a literally nervous system brain dynamic that the chemistry of the brain changes in group dynamics dramatically. Your serotonin levels are going to shift. Your hormonal changes are actually occurring as well for the better when people feel safe, seen, and supported in a group. And all of that contributes dramatically to the level of self-awareness that I can have. And this game, The Invincible Man, is fundamentally the self-aware man. Like, he can, if I can be with anything within me, then I can be with anything outside of me. That's why Invincible Man is such an important term for me, because it appeals to us. We want to be invincible, right? But the way to invincibility is through surrendering and finding that there's already this innate safety and security and support within that we have somehow believed to be lost to us. It never was lost, really. It's buried within. So we're resurrecting from the grave this dormant man who is pure, he's innocent, he's competent, he's loved, he's adored, and it's natural. It's just already so
Powerful once
and
he has those things.
And that's a tremendous power. Beautiful. Yeah.
If you can see how a man who becomes more aware is what the world is missing, who becomes the space where all things can happen around him, and he's willing to showcase his protective nature, like, that's the masculinity we're all yearning for. Yeah. If you can see that, then you're with us. This is the cause you have to support, right? Send your husbands, send your brothers, come, men, and be a part of the mission that the world needs. This is your purpose. You need to come, connect, resolve yourself, become more aware, such that the world becomes more aware, so that we can all live in the place we want to be. Like, that's the energy resonance we're all looking for, and we create it for ourselves. But it starts here with you and us. Come, join the Invincible Man. That's really what we're here for.
So good, man.
Any last things you want to wrap up for, my friend?
Yeah, I think we talked about, that this episode would, challenge everything that people have been taught about communication and conflict resolution. And just to kind of tie it all up in a bow, when you are receiving this type of guidance and support, right? Like I was giving you, Brian, right? You also learn how to provide this for someone else. Now, in a marriage, women want to feel safe. And where most men, I've worked with a lot of men, and I've been this man who did not make my woman feel safe. And the consequences are dire, right? I've got a divorce behind me. I've got like 4 or 5 bunch of failed relationships. Exactly. And, and because Brian and I are willing to be responsible, eventually, in the moment we were not, but we in retrospect, we're like, oh yeah, this is how I caused that, and it's like, it's not an easy pill to swallow, but it's worth it because it prevents the same mistakes from being repeated. And so, I got into this for myself in a way, and I wanted to help others too, but I needed this for myself, this way of being in practice. And there's so much more to it, but it has made me how I am and the way I am with my woman today. Things that she'll say that I would have tried to fix, change, or move her into a point of view. Like I drop in and I just start asking questions. And it's like, I'm literally 100% of the time in 2 years plus, she just melts and she's like, and I said, how you feeling? She's like, I feel so much better. She's like, wow. And it's like, oh, it's so good to finally be effective, because there's nothing more miserable than, like trying and failing, trying and failing, trying and failing. And like, finally it's like, oh, it's so simple. It's just, I don't need to resolve it. I just need to create the space. There's that video, ever seen about it's not the nail? It's like the woman, she's got a nail in her forehead, and you never seen it? I'm going to send this video to you, but she's talking to this guy, her husband, they're on a couch, and she's got this giant, like 7-inch nail in her forehead. And he's like, and she's like, I just got this headache and I don't really feel good. And he's like, honey, we got to take the nail. And she's like, it's not the nail, and like what she wants is just to be heard and to be understood. And he's trying to, like, he sees the problem right in her forehead, and he's just focusing on, it's great, man. I'm going to have to, it's so good. But anyway, so to complete, I think what we showed here was, this is a way to resolve conflict. It's a way to prepare for conflict resolution in ourselves by having this practice where we are being with our own inner world. That's going to make us more spacious and capable of responding in a healthy way. But it also shows us how to be with others or guide others.
It's just, and you can see how a variation of the way Vince does it, the way Brian does it, the way Bob does it, right? Like, it has its own variation, and you get to find yourself in that. You get to find, like, what is unique in your style and your spirit, and like nothing goes away, right? There's like all the magic forthcoming. So that's what we want for the world. And like, oh yes, Vince, you're just so brilliant, buddy. I just love
Likewise.
Just bringing your magic to the space, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and I would like to say, Brian, your presence, your focus in the conversations that we had for years now, it's like just never fails to be stimulating for me and move me in a way I feel highly supported, and my consciousness is expanding, my awareness expands, your vulnerability, your questions, your insights, your perspectives, like it's such a really awesome dynamic. And so that's the idea of joining the Brotherhood. It's, we're going to be exploring inner workings of man in a very safe and empowering and enriching way. And, continuing to explore what presence is. Women want presence. There's a lot of men in the dating world today that are they're trying to use tactics and strategies they're learning from their dating coaches and so on. And I'm just in the listening of hundreds of women that are they're making posts all the time about these men's strategies and tactics. And it's just very disconnecting and disappointing. And honestly, that's not going to sustain a marriage. It's not going to sustain a long-term relationship. This to me is what is the most critical component of a relationship. Learning how to bring consciousness to the relationship. I have 7 failed relationships. That's a lot. Long-term, most of them, except one was 1 year, the rest were 3 or 4 years. Lived with 6 of them for 3 or 4 years. Married to one, engaged to another, tried to do the rest. I've learned a lot through those failures, and now what I am as a result is because of examining all of that. And now I see that, gosh, all the couples I've worked with, my family dynamics I've seen, if men and women have these practices, this way of being, like every other issue can be handled. So you have you're not arguing about the kids and how you're raising them. You're not really arguing about the money. You're not really arguing about, doing the dishes and stuff like that. There's this underlying feeling, sensation world that you have never given space for, that's getting triggered by these superficial things that I'm not saying they're not important, but it's usually never about what we're arguing about. So here in the Brotherhood, we have a way to help men be powerful and effective so that you can transform at a core level. And just go to iaminvincibleman.com. We'll be gathering every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And that's a space where you can show up, share, be seen, contribute, and so much more.
Yeah, absolutely.